What is there? Hey!
Welcome back to Internal Affairs State Police podcast here with the IA guy. Scott Savage is going to be Coach 6 in the studio. Came down for some happy holidays. First and foremost, how was your Christmas, man?
It was great. Yeah.
Even though it's going to happen tomorrow.
Well, but in the future, it seems like it's going to be great.
So far, the holidays have been good?
Yeah, it's been great, yeah.
We are going to talk about de-escalation. De-escalation. We felt, I know we've been having conversations about how is it that we can better prepare or better have an awareness of what this buzzword of de-escalation is. So I figured we, take a jab at, I suppose, let's kind of build a foundation about where de-escalation was. And I'll start off with you, Scott, about the fact that back in July of 1998, and when you were in the academy in 1999, we thought of de-escalation of this, I think it was ATM or ATD, right? Ask, tell, and do, or ask, tell, and make. And here we are 25 years later, and we have this de-escalation theory.
Yeah, de-escalation is not a new thing. It's a buzzword, basically, that a few years ago kind of took off. But any cop that's been doing this for any length of time knows that de-escalation is just a tactic that goes along with every other tactic we use and has been used for a long time. The issue, however, with de-escalation is the definition. Ask 5 people what the definition of de-escalation is, you're going to get 5 answers, right? Ask the public, ask the media, ask your chief, ask an officer what they believe de-escalation is, you're going to get different definitions. The problem is de-escalation is typically talked about in a use of force situation. So if we're not all on the same page with what de-escalation is, and we're about to use force on somebody, you can already see where the problem is. So I think some of the stuff we're going to get into today is let's look at a realistic view of de-escalation. In other words, what can the police really do?
Now, when you launched Savage Training Group, I do know that this de-escalation theory, or I suppose, like you say, it's either a noun or a verb. What challenges did you face when you were rolling this out, knowing that this is something that we're going to have to teach?
Yeah, I launched the company in 2019, and we got constantly inundated with requests from agencies. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you have any de-escalation courses? Hey, do you have something in de-escalation? My hesitance to do anything in that realm is that, Chief, when you're calling, a training unit, when you're calling asking for de-escalation training, are you just trying to check a box? In other words, do you just want a certificate for the officers that says they went to de-escalation training? I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in doing stuff that's effective. So for several years, I held off. We didn't do anything related to de-escalation in that word. You could make the argument that de-escalation's in a lot of our courses, which are about tactics and handling hot calls and those types of stuff. But specifically calling a class de-escalation, I almost wanted nothing to do with it.
Right.
Because there's a class on every corner that's about that. And a lot of it, I'm sorry, amounts to the police should talk nice to that guy.
Right.
You should just talk to him. It's like, well, we already know that. That's not helpful. And that sort of like pedestrian view of de-escalation falls apart the minute the guy's armed or we don't have containment or those types of stuff. So begrudgingly, one of our instructors, Dan Flippo, talked me into it, and we created a course called Practical De-Escalation and Tactical Conduct. You can't separate good tactics from de-escalation, and in many respects, they're similar. So we created a course called Practical De-Escalation and Tactical Conduct that looks at tactics, human performance factors, and the law holistically. We're not just going to train in a silo and say, this is a de-escalation class.
Right.
And the class is not just about verbally persuading somebody, negotiating with somebody. We're really taking a look at what can police really do.
Right.
You mentioned the noun versus a verb thing.
Mm-hmm.
De-escalation is talked about oftentimes like it's a verb. It's an action. It's something we do to somebody. In other words, the police did or did not de-escalate someone. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. As long as you were a cop, as long as I was a cop, I haven't yet developed the superhuman power to control other human beings. In other words, I can't look at somebody and be like, you're de-escalated, or bring out the de-escalation laser, and hit them with it. That's not a thing. my view, my opinion on it, if anything, de-escalation is more like a noun. It's more like something we offer to somebody, sort of metaphorically, like, hey, this is the offer. Would you like to accept it or not? When the conditions are right. De-escalation is not an appropriate tactic if you're saying it's a tactic in every situation.
Right.
If there's imminent threat to a third party, if the person is fleeing, if we don't have the ability to communicate with them, how can we offer them de-escalation? It's not a thing. We need things like containment, control, communication. There's a variety of things that need to be in place before we can safely offer de-escalation. So I think if anyone's looking at de-escalation, whether you're a police critic, an auditor of police departments, a lawmaker, the police chief, no matter who you are, I would think your first step when you're looking at this is, what's your definition? What's your definition? Is it the definition of places like PERF, Police Executive Research Forum, California Post, or your state's sort of certifying agency? Is it the Webster's Dictionary version of it?
Yeah.
Is it my definition? Whose definition are we using? Once we agree on that, maybe we can have a training or a policy or a curriculum that feeds into that. But the first is the definition.
Right. So to be fair to say that people teach or they instruct on de-escalation, but yet we really don't have a grasp as to what exactly is it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will give you a lot of different definitions, and I don't know that mine is the best. Right. I just know probably we should all agree upon what that is.
Right.
I don't know what the best definition of de-escalation is, and semantically, it's not really important for me to get into this debate about it.
Right.
I will say, here's the ones I don't like.
Right.
De-escalation is the absence of force. I don't like that one.
Okay.
The absolute absence of force, is that de-escalation? So unless the police used no force on the guy, then that's de-escalation. Well, wait a minute. What about if we tased him, but we didn't shoot him? What about if we hit him with a baton, but we didn't kill him? What about if we bit that guy with a dog? Now, if you follow California Post's definition, strategies and techniques intended to reduce the intensity of a conflict. Well, if I tase you, that seems pretty intense. If I bite you with my dog, that seems pretty intense, but I didn't shoot you. So if I momentarily increase the intensity, but it ultimately decreases it in the end, does that qualify?
Yeah.
You see how silly this can get
really
100%.
Quick? 100%. And those, I was going to ask about the challenges. So here you are, you spent the last couple of years teaching and instructing on de-escalation. What did you find out about this topic with your students? Or were they surprised, or what was their reaction, and what is it that they got out of it?
Well, it's an interesting thing. If you ask a police officer the question, what's the media's definition of de-escalation, or what's the public's definition, they'll inevitably say something like, oh, they think it's something we do to them. They think it's, it's when we don't use force. They think it's all this and that. But right before I ask that question, I actually kind of trap the students. I'll ask them, what's your definition of de-escalation? Real quick, what's your definition? And to a person, every officer will say, well, it's when we calm things down. Well, it's when we do this. It's when we do that. Yet when I ask you later, what's the media's definition, you get all upset because you're thinking they are saying it's something you do. And police go, well, you don't understand. The suspect is involved. They gotta, the suspect's involved in this. They're not taking ownership of that part. Yeah, but you gave me the same definition. See, the officers are giving me the same definition that the quote, the media or the public, whoever's the definition they don't like. So I think it's important that we as police officers and we educate the general public that, I'm sorry to tell you, we, the police, cannot control the behavior of other human beings. Now, it seems like we can. We can control some environmental factors, containment, less lethal launchers. Yeah. We can manipulate the circumstance a little bit to some extent. But if this person decides, I'm not cooperating, no matter what you do, or doesn't decide, maybe they're mentally ill and they don't have the ability to decide, they're suffering from contaminated thought and they're just going to resist, but they're not meaning to. There's nothing I can do to get the person to voluntarily cooperate without using force unless they agree to this.
Right.
So an example is, picture a guy with a baseball bat, and he's mentally ill or he's threatening people or whatever the situation is, and there's some officers have arrived on scene and they're trying to get the guy into custody without, hurting him. how can I do that? I could try to motivate him. Hey, buddy. Hey, pal, why don't you do this? I could try to negotiate with him using actual negotiating techniques, active listening skills, all those types of things. But at the end of the day, if this man can't or won't agree to this offer of de-escalation, there's not much we can do to get him to voluntarily cooperate. If we hope to get that person into custody in that situation, we're going to have to compel him into custody. How's that done? Through force. And what I've seen is that some de-escalation classes are sort of brushing by all that.
Okay.
And talking about, well, let's just talk nice to him. Here's how you talk nice to him. And I think we're gonna examine a case where maybe this training is not a realistic depiction of kind of what goes on out in the street.
Yeah, which brings me to Perf. Let's talk about Perf. So I do understand that the law enforcement executives tackled on to tell you, hey, this is what we think de-escalation is. Tell me about that one video that I know that we utilize to get a really good perspective on this topic.
Well, obviously I have opinions about this video, but I would encourage you, if you've never seen this video, to take a look and evaluate this for yourself, okay? So what is this video? There's an entity called the Police Executive Research Forum, which is a sort of think tank for law enforcement, okay? They're very, very well known. They have a tremendous amount of resources and money, and they every so often put out publications, okay? And they put out a publication called the Guiding Principles on Use of Force. Mm-hmm. If you look up this document by Perf, the Guiding Principles on Use of Force, look at the cover. There's 3 photographs on the cover. Look at the one on the far right. The one on the far right is a photograph, a still from a video that's very similar to the one we're going to watch. It depicts the very same thing, so it might as well be from this video, okay? Now, we're going to watch the video. But if the authors put it on the cover, they think this is pretty good. Hey, we put this on the cover, so this must be, these are our guys, this is our video. The video is this. Police Executive Research Foundation flies a bunch of chiefs of police and senior sort of police leaders from all across the U.S., flies them to Scotland. And the police officers in Scotland are going to put on some demonstrations and sort of show how they do it. And the theory is, the cops in the UK do it right. The cops in the North America don't do it right. Why don't you come learn from these guys? Because half of them don't even have guns, and they're not shooting people like you guys are. So why don't you come over here and learn? Great. In this video, you're going to see a depiction of a scenario, which I'll let the viewer decide: is this realistic or not? Because you and I can go out and make a training video any day and make it go any way we want because it's fake, right? So we'll take a look at the video and we'll kind of evaluate whether this is realistic. So let's take a look at the video. This is just a quick shot. What you're going to see here is, again, a couple of Scottish cops. They are going to be standing in a parking lot, and there's a role player who's probably also a cop who is pretending to be a mentally ill person. He's got a baseball bat. Now, the 2 cops are going to respond. Take a look at how they respond and start asking yourself, is this realistic? Does this seem like realistic? Let's take a look at the video.
Get people! Move it! What are you doing? Hey! What are the about? Drop the bat. Drop the baseball bat. Fuck off, listen. Move! What's happened? No way, Hottie. Listen, what's happened? Drop the baseball bat for us. No! What's happened? No! Listen, you need to talk. Shut up! Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Listen, drop the baseball bat, okay? We'll try to help you. No, we can't. Listen, we can't go away, okay? You clearly need some help just now, okay? We'll give you some help. Go back, okay? Okay, drop the baseball bat and we'll come and speak to you, okay? No, do it! Who are you speaking to? No, hear them! Right, listen, my name's Callum and that's me, okay? What's your name? Listen! No! What's your name? John. John. You need to drop the baseball bat for us, okay? No! What's happened today? Thanks. No! John. Go away. What's happened? Go away. What's happened? Go away. That's why I hunt you. What's happened? Just calm down. John, go there. Okay, speak to me. What's happened, John? John, I need you to speak to me, okay? We need to get you some help, okay? Stay back. Nobody's helping. We'll help you, okay? Do you need to go to the hospital? I've been to the hospital. Right, what happened at the hospital? Give me the blue pills. I don't like blue pills. Blue pills. I want yellow pills. Blue pills don't help me. John, what we'll do is we'll take you up to the hospital and we'll get you to see another doctor. Okay, we'll get you up and we'll see another doctor.
You just batter me. You
We're
hit
going
me.
to batter you, John, okay? We're here to help you. That's what we're trying to do.
You hurt me.
John, we're trying to help you here, okay? But we can't do that until you get rid of the baseball bat. Okay?
My bat. I like my bat.
John, that's fine, but we need to get your help first. I think your health's more important. John,
need
we'll
to
get you
help
some
me.
help. Is there anyone
Never
can
worked.
contact for you, John? Do you want me to contact anyone for you?
A social worker sometimes helps.
Right, that's fine.
She
What's
gives me
your...
the blue pills today.
Well, I'll tell you what, John,
The one
I'll
blue
contact
pills.
your social worker then. Okay, I'll contact your social worker. We'll get you up to the hospital and we'll get you some help.
What hospital will you take me to?
Well, what one do you want to go to?
No guy Monklands.
Right, we won't go to Monklands then. We'll go to the one next to it. Okay, there's
Royal?
one. Yeah, we'll take you to Royal. Okay, it's
We're
on the
nice
way.
to Royal.
We'll take you there and we'll get you some help. Okay, but before we do so, I need you to get rid of the baseball bat for me. Okay?
You won't hurt me.
That's what I need you, John. I promise you, none of us will hurt you.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we just saw in terms of these Scottish cops trying to. I guess my first question to you is: this is a sterile environment, so it's training. And I always say to people, maybe you can agree with me that every time you apply force, it's not pretty, it's not ugly, it doesn't go textbook because there's just so many variables that we got to think about. What's your thoughts?
Yes, so this is a training scenario, and I would call this isn't even training. I would call this an act. This is a play.
Right.
This is a play. We're acting, and we're putting on a performance for the folks that are in the audience there. And again, these are police leaders from America who went to see this. Okay, not faulting these cops out in the UK. I'm sure they're great guys, but I think they were told, "Why don't you go put on a performance?" Right. So the officers are standing within a short distance
Yes.
of a guy who's got a baseball bat. And we don't know the call, but in California, we'd probably call that a 5150, where we have legal cause to take this person into custody for mental evaluation. Maybe he's committed a crime. It doesn't really matter for this situation.
Right.
These officers are standing close to him. There's no barriers between he and they, and they've got their batons out. And they're holding their batons behind their leg, which is a way of sort of hiding the baton because maybe we don't want to set this guy off. Here's my question. If this is the right way of handling it, if this is the right way of handling this situation with a mentally unstable person who law enforcement has an interest in taking this dude into custody, he's uncooperative,
Yeah.
he's professing his anger towards the police, he's yelling and swearing at you. If this is the right thing to do, would this tactic survive a different choice by the suspect?
Yeah.
In other words, if that suspect, if we put a little earpiece in his ear and said, "Hey, role player, on the count of 3, I want you to attack the officers. I want you to run at the officers with your bat and just try to hit one over the head." Would that tactic of standing without any barriers between me and him, standing close to him with my little baton out, is that going to work? I think the answer is no, right?
Yeah.
That dude who's a role player looks like a physically capable adversary who can rapidly aggress the officers and be on top of one of them in a few seconds, right?
Yes.
And bang one over the head. So what does that mean? Well, in real life, not in these fakey scenario performances, in real life, the suspect gets a vote. Now, it doesn't mean like we let the guy vote. It just means that's a way of saying the suspect chooses how this thing ends. Let's say you and me are there. We're dealing with a guy with a baseball bat. We're trying to get him into custody. We are just going to react and respond to whatever he does.
Right.
In the practical de-escalation and tactical conduct course, we talk about there's about 8 different things a suspect can do: flee, attack, posture delay, and on and on. One of them is comply. Only one. This tactic that these Scottish police officers are using only works if he complies. If he does not comply, if he doesn't say, "Hey, I'm going to put my hands behind my back and go with the program," this tactic falls apart.
Right.
So anytime you're thinking about what tactic to use, anytime, should we use this tactic or that tactic, we need to be asking ourselves as tacticians, is this tactic I'm about to use brittle, meaning it falls apart the minute the guy resists or makes a different choice, or robust, meaning this will survive a series of different choices by the suspect? No matter what he chooses, I have a plan for that. We've got containment if he runs. We've got less lethal weapons if he attacks us. We've got lethal coverage if there's a lethal, and on and on and on. To simply say, this is how you do it, leaves out the suspect's choice. Leaves out, now, critics will say right now, Scott, Mentally ill people aren't choosing.
Right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But if they can't make a logical choice, even more reasons to not use this tactic because they're going to make some choice that is, irrational. Yeah. So again, I just think if we were to put a little earpiece in this role player and be like, attack the officers, within seconds you'd see, ooh, that's not a good tactic to use. But if the camera pans, if you watch the video, the camera pans to the right a little bit, you see a grandstand of police chiefs from America who were told, this is how you do it. And I'm here to say that's not realistic. And any of us can make a fake looking scenario that ends any way we want because we're controlling the scenario. It's just not real.
Right. Now, there is a portion of this that talks when they're taking them into custody.
Yes. Let's watch. There's another little section of the video here. Let's watch it and take a look at it. They're going to be taking the suspect into custody, and you can kind of see they've talked to him for a number of minutes. The officers did a great job talking to him. I'll give them that. They definitely negotiated with him and tried to present themselves calmly, and that is all the right things to do. The only thing I would change is let's get some cover. Let's have some.
Okay. Nobody's going to hurt you, okay? Nobody's going to hurt you, John, okay? Get rid of the baseball bat and we'll get you some help, okay? Throw it over there.
Promise you're not hurt me.
John, promise we're not going to hurt you, okay? Throw the baseball bat over there.
Stuff away.
We can't put that away until you get rid of the baseball
Promise?
bat. We promise, okay? Get rid of the
Give me
baseball
the
bat.
royal.
I promise, right? Come over this way for me, John.
Don't hurt me.
John, come over this way, okay?
Don't hurt me.
John, see before we come any closer to you, we need to make sure you don't have any
Don't hurt
weapons
me.
on you, okay?
Nothing else on
Right,
me.
can you do me a favour and lift up the front of your jumper just to show me that, okay?
Nothing else on
John,
me.
one more thing. You turn around and show me and lift up your jumper. That's fine, John. Right, John, turn around and face me just now.
Don't hurt
Okay?
me.
Right, Graham's going to come in just now and he's going to speak to you.
Who's
okay?
Graham?
Graham's
Graham.
officer
Don't hurt
over
me.
there, okay?
Don't hurt me.
Okay?
Don't hurt me.
He's going to come in
Please.
and he's going to take control of you, okay?
Just you come down.
Just relax, John.
You don't hurt me.
That's fine.
Promise?
John, we're going to put handcuffs on you just
Promise?
now, okay? And we're going to take you up to hospital. Okay?
Right.
John, are they okay?
They're okay.
Right, that's fine. Okay, I'm just going to double lock them so they don't get any tighter, okay?
Okay.
Right, that's fine. Okay? Just stay calm.
Right, don't hurt me though.
We're not going to hurt you.
Okay, so what here in LAPD would say code 4 in custody without incident, right? So let me ask you, after watching all this, because I get the same sentiment where if you're watching this particular video, at least for me, one of the first things I think to myself is how realistic is this? Because you're in an environment where it's training. Like you said, there might be, we're here to perform and to put on a showcase for these law enforcement executives. But at the same time, I think to myself, is this really an actual scenario? And what I recall a lot when we apply force talks about, look, there is these real life variables, whether it's nighttime, weather conditions. You might do a traffic stop and next thing you know, they bail out of the car and now they barricaded themselves. So all these fluid movements and these variables come into play when you're trying to apply force or yet even de-escalate. What's the thoughts about, them taking them into custody and just the overall sense of this video?
Yeah, I think, again, this is a positive scenario. It ends positively, and it was designed to promote a certain tactic. That tactic being we're going to stand without any cover between us and the person we're trying to take into custody. We're going to have our batons out, and we're not going to display them, and it's all going to end peacefully. But again, it's unrealistic because it doesn't take into consideration, yes, the environmental factors that you described, but also the main factor here, which is this is an adversarial contact between two parties, the suspect or subject and the officers. And this one only allows for the suspect to make one choice, which is to comply. But I'm sorry, if the guy is going to comply, it honestly doesn't matter what tactics you use, because my wife, who's not a police officer, could go up and handcuff this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody could handcuff this guy. If he's going to comply, what does it matter what tactics you use, right? We don't want to use tactics that depend completely on him complying. We want to use a tactic that survives or works in a variety of ways. So like in our training class, practical de-escalation and tactical conduct, we talked about let's use robust tactics, something that no matter which choice the suspect makes, flee, fight, ambush, whatever he decides to do, we have a plan for that. You know, like we got an app for that. Like we got less lethal, we have containment, we have whatever. Now, sometimes you're going to find yourself in a situation like this where you're face to face with some guy and he's got a bat. Sure, of course, all those things happen. But this to me is a planned tactic, and we're going to show how what we do. I think at one point in the video, a couple other cops arrive and they just sort of like all stand around him. And now they don't have to worry about crossfires.
Like corral them.
Yeah, they corral them, and I don't think they have guns, so maybe they don't have to really worry about a crossfire. To us, that'd be a bad thing.
Yes.
But you know, again, I think training should be realistic. I think de-escalation should be trained holistically in the middle of everything else we do, interleaved with the law, good tactics, officer safety principles, not just let's take the de-escalation in a little silo and today, you know, we'll train on de-escalation, which really amounts to us just talking to people and every scenario ends great, whatnot. You know, again, just these types of scenarios just kind of are like nails on a chalkboard for me because they're unrealistic.
You're right. Speaking of de-escalation, before we wrap it up, here in the state of California, can you kind of talk to us a little bit about how it's, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if it's codified into our use of force policy, which is 835 APC here in the state of California. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion in California because we have a law for everything here. And a lot of folks are believing that there's an affirmative duty to de-escalate, that somehow there's a law in California that says the police must de-escalate. Actually doesn't say that. California Government Code 7286 says departments have to have a policy that says the officers will use de-escalation when feasible. You got to know what feasible means. There's a legal definition for that as well. And then Penal Code 835 talks about, it only mentions de-escalation once. 835 is our use of force law. Only mentions the word once and basically says the officers need not retreat, but retreat is not de-escalation or tactical, or, you know, other tactics. It's just saying what it's not. So it's, again, a little semantical debate. But I think it's important because I've heard police administrators saying we legally have to de-escalate. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Before you start saying stuff like that, let's make sure we're all clear on that because that can get awry very, very quickly. Where now we're saying, well, the officers didn't do this, so they're somehow legally culpable or out of policy.
I think people have this notion that, hey, you know what, since we have to de-escalate, it's like embedded into the use of force policy or our laws here in the state of California.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, as it relates to California, what have you found out about de-escalation throughout the United States?
It's the same thing that whenever we train throughout the U.S. or here in California, it's the same. Cops say, hey, we've been doing this stuff for years, right? If anything, I think where we kind of give a different spin on things is incorporating de-escalation holistically, interleaving it with everything else we're doing. So it's not just a standalone thing. We incorporate it in realistic scenarios. You're not going to find a scenario like this in any of our trainings, I'll tell you that. Ours are going to be difficult, challenging, tense, rapidly evolving, all the stuff that cops see every day. And going, okay, is de-escalation meaning let's stop, slow this down, and try to offer this guy the chance to cooperate? Is that the appropriate tactic now? Or is it an active shooter where that's not an appropriate tactic? Right. How about a hostage barricade? How about this, high-risk car stop? And we go through realistic scenarios. So I think by and large, cops around the U.S. are doing a pretty darn good job with stuff. Maybe we could use a little help articulating force and learning how to describe what we're doing sometimes. But again, that probably starts with clarity.
Yes.
What is, let's all agree on a definition before we try to train it and have a policy on it. So
and just to kind of dig a little deeper is the difference between verbal and nonverbal. There's that portion of de-escalation.
Yeah, sure.
What I've also learned is de-escalation can also mean suspect near the table where there's a weapon at the table, and here you are, officers, you have your less lethal, you got your beanbag or you got your taser, and you're telling the suspect, hey, you know what? Don't reach for that gun. Don't reach for that knife, because if you do, this beanbag is going to hurt. And next thing you know, the suspect goes for it, and we engage in non-lethal force. Well, that is a form of de-escalation, and not many people really think about that stuff. So to have this video to kind of depict that, hey, you know what, law enforcement executives, this is the way to go, I really feel like we did a disservice.
I think it was a disservice as well. And I think anytime you take one particular topic out of the most complex job function in the world, I think being a police officer is the most complex job. People will say, well, other people have hard jobs. Yeah, complex to do it correctly. And if you take de-escalation out and say, we're just going to train in this little thing in a silo, like we're just going to look at de-escalation today. Everybody come to class. You don't need any weapons. We're just going to talk, in a classroom. Right there, it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's not how we actually face things, right? So if you really want to do an interesting sort of training on de-escalation, do it in the mat room. Do it with every officer in full simunitions gear, with Sims guns, where you don't go into unknown situations. Just be like, hey, officers, go in that room and deal with that.
Yep.
Where you may get hurt.
Yep.
You may get wrestled with some,
stabbed.
BJJ, practitioner who's a role player. You may get shot with a Sims round. And now let's see how you just, quote, talk to him.
Yeah.
It's very different, but that's realistic.
Yeah.
That's realistic.
Did we miss anything for wrap it up?
I don't think so. I think we solved all the world's problems, and now everyone's an expert in de-escalation. That's how you really do it. No, come on. This is a complex thing, and so I just invite all your viewers who are cops, please, please, please come check out our class, Practical De-Escalation and Tactical Conduct. I think we do a pretty good job of kind of giving you some new concepts, some new ideas, and maybe something a little bit better than the video you just saw there.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it all. And we're going to wrap it up. Scott, thanks for stopping by. And like always, please be safe out there and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you. Happy holidays.